Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by Curtis Sprouse. Curtis helps companies build world class leaders, stronger teams, and faster paths from science to market. He is the president and CEO of Eureka Connect, where he uses validated tools and proven processes to improve individual and organizational performance. Through Eureka Connect Behavioral Dynamics, Curtis has helped more than 1,000 companies unlock measurable gains in revenue, profit, and team effectiveness. With over 30 years of experience across biotech, pharma, healthcare, and high tech, he brings deep commercial insights and practical leadership wisdom. Curtis is passionate about advancing innovation, developing people, and turning breakthrough science and technology into real world impact at scale today. So I've asked him to join us here today to share his story and insights into how we can successfully navigate into the future. So Curtis, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on your show here, Daryl.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I remember, I really enjoyed our pre-call, and I mean, it's been maybe a couple of months since then, but I was curious before we get into all this, how did you even get started on this path? You come from a family of entrepreneurs. Were your parents in this field, and you're just carrying the torch, or?
No, actually, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. We did for a period of time. We had restaurants, and she ran the restaurants. And my dad was an entrepreneurial guy. Worked for a large corporation for years in sales, but always, was buying apartment buildings and gas stations and restaurants. And so that entrepreneurial dynamic was a component of our upbringing. But he worked over 40 years, I think, for the same company.
Right,
There was also that component about loyalty and staying with the company. And so I think I was fortunate that I got to see both.
right. So how did your journey begin? Did you have a newspaper route or a lemonade stand, or where did you get started?
Yeah, we did. I did newspapers and I had a lawn business. I cut lawns. I painted houses. I did landscaping. I worked for construction companies, big commercial construction companies through high school and college. And then went off to get a degree in business and accounting and ended up at a public accounting firm and then got recruited to be a CFO at a startup. And then I eventually got promoted to CEO and sold that company off and got recruited to go to work for a consulting firm in Boston, which is how I got to Boston. And then started my own firm, ran that for 20 years and, started a series of companies over those years, from tech companies to biopharma device companies. So I sit on the board of a few. I have the behavioral science company, which is my day job. And then I run a not-for-profit called the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship, where we help innovators take ideas from concept to market. So, basically running two companies that are for-profit, Eureka Connect, and the not-for-profit, the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship, and then working with a lot of spin-out companies from the IB.
So wait, you became a CFO, and then the pearly gates opened up, and money rained from the heavens, and it's been nothing but ease and success and smooth sailing since then.
No, that's not the way it works. It's, you have a success and then you have some failures and then you have some success and you have some failures. And anybody that's done enough in their life or tried to do many things in their life, you're not always going to have success. Or well, at least this person didn't. So I think you learn more from some of the failures. You learn that you can't, sometimes you'll do everything right and it still won't work is another lesson
Mm.
that I learned.
Why would you do everything right and it still not work? That's a great.
The market's not right, the investors aren't interested, you have bad employees, and you did your part and you were stuck with a certain team and you couldn't change it. And that team wasn't the team you needed, but politically you were in a place where you didn't have the full authority to change it or fix it or improve it. There's a myriad of reasons why over time, you pick a bad partner on a project. And that partner, I've worked on enough projects now where there's a number of reasons that they haven't worked. And there are a number of reasons they have, where you do have a good team and you do have a good idea and it's the right idea at the right time. Those are the things. And you get it more right than wrong because you're
Mm,
not going to get
mm.
everything right.
Right. I like that. I really like that. How do you know? Because I think a lot of people have a hard time knowing when, like, there's that sunken cost fallacy. So how do you know when to throw in the towel and do something new? I mean, for some people, that means they have to, especially small solopreneurs, and that their identity is wrapped up in what they're doing. So how do you know when's the time?
I wish I could say I know with absolute certainty when it is. I can tell you that I had one company called Eyeball. It was a core imaging lab. It was a virtual core imaging lab. And we had a big pharma company fund the start of the company. We built a really nice platform where we could do imaging as part of clinical research, and we could grab the image rate from the scanner and do the quality control and manage the flow of data coming into the study. And it was really pretty slick how it all worked. But it was sort of ahead of its time. That was still dollars for hours work done by core imaging labs. Par Excel was the leader in that space. And at the end, we just couldn't get investors to back it. They didn't want to back, they felt that it wasn't backing the evolution of the technology and go to market. It was built basically fighting Par Excel in a dollars for hours model and selling software services. So the timing wasn't good. And once I had an investor sort of tell me, Kurt, this isn't going to happen, we closed the company down in a week. I've had others of that, other companies that I've held on to and probably ran longer than I should have around data integration. We were integrating data with pharmacy data, with pharmacy claims data with medical records data, and it was really messy data and it wasn't working real well. And we went at that a long time. We eventually sold the company, but we sold it at a loss. It was not a successful transaction.
I appreciate you sharing some of this. So you talk about running multiple companies at once. How does someone do that? How do you juggle that? How do you actually own multiple companies at once for people that are listening here?
Well, Eureka Connect is my behavioral company. I spend about 70% of my time on that. The IBE is probably somewhere between 15 and 20% of myself to not-for-profit, which is it's an event-based program where it's a 5-day course on translation. So we teach usually 2 to 4 of them a year. So, that is where I have a team. They do the recruiting, they set up the faculty for the event, they manage the facilities. And, I'm basically in front of people that are wanting to learn more about it and presenting the project, the program. But it's not day-to-day operations for me. It's
Uh,
more overseeing it, the strategy, getting sponsors or supporters or faculty members that join the program, and then teaching. And I teach a fragment of the curriculum when we actually hold a program. So most of my time spent on Eureka Connect, and more time over the last 2 years has been spent on portfolio companies. So there's companies I've helped to found. And again, I'm not involved in the operations. I usually sit on the board. I might be involved with helping to build the team, strategy, partnerships, maybe advising on the fundraising activities and how we'll go about it and where we could find capital or strategic partners. So it's a lot more, guiding the operational team than it's actually being part of the operational team. So it's fractional time, but it's, I believe high value time because it's based on experience and relationships that I've been able to develop.
and so what led you to Eureka Connect?
I think it's really the heart and soul of everything I do because it's basically using validated instruments to develop a behavioral profile of the individual. I call it behavioral mechanism of action. Why does Daryl act and react the way he does? And when we understand that with greater clarity, Daryl can direct his own personal development in a much more focused, relevant way. And so I believe that, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm good at picking talent." Well,
Yeah.
I think I think I'm good at it, but I'm much better if I have data
Mhm.
that helps me understand the specifics of that person at that point in time and how to support them in their growth and development and how they're going to integrate with a team of 5, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 people. So making that where you have objective insights and data and history has made me a much better leader and contributor where we can bring that component to the companies we work with. And we work with very big companies. We work with, Fortune 10 biopharma device companies, and we work with two people in a garage that have an idea. A lot of times, an executive will say, "Hey, I want you to assess my kid. I've got an
Uh,
18-year-old.
yep.
Could you help my 18-year-old, or can you help my 23-year-old? Or I have a, 22-year-old who's trying to get a job and just graduated from college and has no idea why they're not being successful." And so
Mm,
there's a lot of there's a lot of gratification
yeah.
in working with not only the teams and leadership teams I work with, but and oftentimes I get brought into meeting their spouse or meeting their kids.
Yeah, that's so Sun Tzu, I forget the quote, but there's something like, if you don't know the enemy, or know thyself is the key principle of it. I have to look it up. I'll Google it. But Sun Tzu's got a great quote about that, where you can know your enemy, but if you don't know yourself, you'll still fail. and the ultimate. So knowing yourself is powerful. What's a validated instrument? I know I heard you say that, and it made me think of this term we call black belt eyes. I have a friend that had a MMA school in Miami, and he did martial arts his whole life. And so anytime he wanted to get a teacher, he would only train with them if they were good enough to kick him in the head, because you got to be good and you want someone that's good. And so when he opened up his own school, his own MMA school, he thought, I want everyone to know how great I am. So every time they come their first class, I'm going to make sure I kick him in the head before they leave. And he couldn't figure out why people weren't coming back for his second class and signing up. It's because he was kicking everybody in the head, and he forgot what it was like to be brand new, day one, nervous at a school or to a thing. And I heard you say validated instrument. What does that mean? Can you unpack that a little bit? What's a validated instrument?
Well, let's go back to something you said, and I'll get to the validated instrument, but the first part is know thyself. I just did a feedback with a executive at a startup, and he was skeptical. And now we measure a thing called compromise, which is,
Mm.
open-mindedness to what I'm about to say. His score was a 3. So he, and his reaction was, no one would say that I'm cynical or judgmental. And I'm like, well, I'm reading your body language. You're judging this. You don't even know what I'm about to say. But we were on the discussion for over an hour and a half, and he got to a place where he really understood that, yes, he has high accommodation, so think of compromise, Daryl's the front door. Were you open-minded before I started to talk? And then accommodation is, once you know what I want, how willing and how easily do you move to a new way of thinking? So he had really low compromise, but really high accommodation, which means his transition could be inconsistent. He could come in really stubborn, but then if he likes me, maybe he just moves really quickly to my belief and my view and my perspective. But there's also that part where low compromise could cause him to shut down and not listen effectively, right? And so he and I talked about examples of where he might not be optimizing that transition. And he's like, I don't get it. And so we started talking about this thing about comprehension, that if I listen to you say something to me and I assume I know what you meant, but I really don't know what you were thinking, then there could be a large disconnect between
Yeah.
what I was thinking and what you actually interpreted.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I helped him to understand why in his profile that could happen, because he's high reflectivity. In his mind, he's very impatient, low communication. He doesn't need much data, low compromise, high expertise, overconfident. And I said, it doesn't always happen, but it happens more than it should. And when it happens, you're not the best version of yourself. And he's like, gosh, you're right. I can see situations where that's occurring. Now, I think this guy is pretty introspective. I think he does have good self-awareness, but there was a nuance to his personality that we were able to pull out of the data that he didn't quite see or understand. And once he saw it illuminated, that blind spot became relevant.
Aha for him.
And he went from sort of challenging me, like he's like, oh, I've done this stuff and I work for a company that did it. I don't know if I agree with, my scores are all over the place. Does that mean I'm schizophrenic? And by the end, he said, wow, this really helped me to see some things that I could be doing better. And I ended the conversation by saying, look, as an individual contributor, you're the real deal. But I said, my ask is bigger of you. Elevate the people around you, not just yourself. It's not about just, you're built to carry people. You're built to go above and beyond what others may be able to naturally do. Do it more, not less. And don't focus on just your own performance, but focus on the performance of those around you, your peers and your team. And
That's really
and
powerful insight for someone to have, if you can have them really internalize that, for sure.
And then, we talked about very specific things he could do. We got really specific about, and he has children. So we were able to talk about examples with his children, how they were different and where this might be beneficial to his wife, who, is trying to understand one of their children better. So that kind of thing. So you ask about validated instruments. We use 4 different instruments. They are different approaches to understanding behavior.
What are instruments?
The instruments are developed by third parties.
But
So these are,
what is it when you say an instrument?
it's a questionnaire.
There, okay.
Questionnaires.
So it's question, and when it's validated, what it means is that it's been tested enough that there's no leading questions, no like culturally biased questions, and it's been tested enough that the results you get, because a lot of people don't know. They just think, oh, I slap a bunch of questions together, and but how do you know that you're actually measuring what you're trying to measure? And that means you have to go through a process called validation. For people that aren't in academia, don't know that. And that means you have to actually do a robust test of your questionnaire of your measurement tools to see how accurately does it actually produce the result that you're trying, or measure the thing that you're trying to measure. And that gives you confidence that when you have somebody do it, that you can trust that there's a statistical confidence level. I think it's 97. It's not 95. I think you go higher than that. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but
Yeah, there are different intervals of confidence that you can apply. These are pretty high level. I think they're all within that high 90th percentile range. Off the top of my head, I don't remember where all four of them play out. But um, your point is absolutely dead on, which is we measure things like, let's just give you an example, energy. So my score on energy from 0 to 100 is a 99. I walk fast, talk fast, I'm loud. That's part of, we call that a genetic trait, because while I can slow down how I talk and I
mm,
can lower my voice, I'm thinking about it. As soon as I stop thinking about it, I start to go back to my normal cadence. So energy and me knowing that that 99 gives me a high level of confidence that that's an accurate score. Yeah, there's very, very, very few people in this world that are physically moving. Now, that doesn't mean in a race fast. Like
right,
my physical demeanor is fast,
right.
right? Versus somebody that might be like a 10
Mhm.
and they tend to be very measured and methodical. So, an example I like to use is if you took a 10 and a 99 and put them in the yard and said, pick up all the sticks on the ground.
Yeah.
The 99 would pick up more sticks, but the 10 might pick them up in an area where their area looks really nice, where
Yeah.
the 99 is just running around haphazardly picking up the sticks.
Oh yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean the quality of the outcome is going to be better because it's a 99 versus a 10. It
Yeah.
just means there's a different mental approach. And so the data helps us to understand those kinds of dynamics.
And this is important. I think it's a lot of people even struggle to accept it, that the differences between us. People have a hard time, in my experience, understanding that you are super unique, and it's hard for you to understand the desires, needs, motivations of 100,000 other people out there in the world. It's a big world, and there's a lot of people like you. But it wasn't until I traveled Japan. Like, I remember I left for Japan and people were going, "Oh, what about culture shock?" And I went, "Culture shock, smulture shock, like whatever. We all have moms, we all have skin and hair and heart." No, there are real differences between people, and it's not a bad thing. My parents, I just told you, my parents came for 7 weeks to the Philippines, and I would have to tell them things like there's different, like the climate. You're from Canada, we're snow people. It's hot here, and the culture's different here. Like the Asian culture is very different from the West, and they just, like, the nuance is hard for sometimes for people to pick up, but it's incredibly powerful when you understand it. And it's, and then, anyways, I just wanted to get into that because, like, are there certain, how many categories of different types of people are there? Maybe I should say, like, you've got the different, you got your, what is it, your Miles Briggs and your Colby and all this. How many different kinds of assortments of people would you say there were in terms of buckets? Obviously, we're all unique, but
Great, great question. I hate to say that there's any kind of category where you can bucket people, which Myers-Briggs does, and they all do it. You're an introvert, you're an extrovert, you're this, you're that. We don't do any of that. And here's why. The other day, my team and I, we were looking at 5,000 assessments,
so just
five, 17 data points, and then we have three others around stress. So it's basically 20 data points. But if you just took the 17, do you know how many overlapping profiles we have?
how many?
Zero. To your point, that there's never been an overlapping profile. There have
Wow.
never been two people that are overlapping.
Wow.
Now, definitionally, there are people that can overlap,
Right.
meaning there are elements but even in the definitions, let's say I'm an energy score of 99 and you're an 81. Definitionally, we're both in the high energy category, but there's a big difference between an 81 and a 99. And so when you look at things like dominance, competing, you can be aggressive. Competing starts at 79. I'm a 79 right now. I used to be a 98. Neuroplasticity, I worked on bringing it down over 20 years. I was a much more aggressive competitor when I was younger than I am today.
Right.
And it's with intent that I've moderated that intensity because it wasn't healthy for marriage or my kids or how I navigated
Mhm.
life. And it wasn't bad when you're competing.
Yeah.
It was, but it
Outside of
wasn't,
competition.
I had to work so much harder to moderate that intensity playing a board game, for instance,
Mhm.
or playing a pickup game of basketball. And now I still have the competitiveness, but the aggression isn't as severe and it's easier for me to moderate. and it's easier for others to tolerate. So there's not good or bad to this stuff. It's about creating balance in your behavioral profile so that you're more consistently the best version of yourself. And that's what we strive to do. And that version of self is going to vary across every person you're ever going to meet, to your point.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I love that. And the Sun Tzu, I looked up the Sun Tzu quote is, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. And I think that's really true. I think a lot of reason why, in my experience, some businesses fail is like they just don't understand. There's timing and then there's things that just don't work out. And that's definitely a percentage. It's like these UAPs, like the majority of them can be explained, and there's some that are just anomalies and we don't know. And there's some businesses that it just everything was done right, but we just don't know. And then a lot of the others, it's due to a lack of true understanding. It's details that got glossed over. And I think that something like this is really powerful, really beneficial for people to know themselves, their team, how people interact together, where you're blind, where you're not blind. I think that's really, 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 really important. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you typically see clients and customers making?
It's great because you asked the question that actually addresses something I wanted to bring out. It happened today in the feedback I was doing. The problem is they don't define the problem correctly. So this particular person was upset about something. And I got to they were upset about this thing because they were stressed. I could see their stability score was low. And so I said, why are you stressed? Because you're very talented. You're very capable. There's no big watch outs in your profile, but you're stressed. Why is that? And you've been in the game a while. You know what the game is. And so he gave me the reason for being stressed. And it really emanates from, how do I say this? It emanates from he doesn't believe his value to his company is well understood. And so we talked about why he has that belief. And I said, well, who in the company could adjust and fix that problem for you? And he said, well, this person could do it, my boss. I said, well, great. Do they know that this is an issue for you?
Yeah.
And his response was, well, they should. I'm like, but do they know? Right. So the issue in his profile that which is showing the stress emanates from the fact that he doesn't have clarity as to what his boss's view is on the topic. And I said, you might bring this up to your boss and tell him what your expectation is. And he may say, yeah, you're right. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
If there is a difference in your thinking and his, you need to understand why that exists, not that it exists. So we talked about that his problem is that he doesn't know what his boss is thinking. He doesn't know how far that is from his own thinking. And as a result, he lays awake at bed at night thinking, I'm underappreciated, without knowing whether that's actually the case or not.
Right.
So biggest
Huge.
problem I see is people don't in general define their problems accurately.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of that might just be we're so busy, and often the word to decide means to cut away. And sometimes people have a hard time cutting away things. We're so distracted. Right now, what is it? Naval's got this great quote. All our diseases today are diseases of abundance. We have excess calories, we have excess convenience, we have excess, and we have so much going on. There's not a lot of silence or time for introspection. Just traveling would often be like a multi-day thing. Now you do it in 20 minutes in a car while you're zipping down and you're listening to music and you're probably texting and you shouldn't be while you're driving. Like we're overstimulated. And so some of it is just that. So what do you think are some specific skills or behaviors that are important for people to improve and develop, especially with what's going on right now?
Well, I'll jump on that, but I want to touch on what you just said, which is, think about this, that our economically challenged population in the United States, poor people, used to die of starvation. Now they die of diabetes and heart disease.
Right.
They die from diseases of abundance where they're eating junk food as opposed to starving to death.
Right.
To your point.
Right. Yeah.
But to sort of talk about what are the key things that people should learn, I think number one, first and foremost, always social acuity. The ability to build a connection and show genuine care and compassion to another human being is the number one factor in high performance. And that's been studied by Google. There's been tons of studies written on it. They published in, I think it was 2017, New York Times, they published the culmination of, I think it was 20 years of work, 57,000 employees, meta-analysis on 200 different studies on high performance. And what they found is the depth and strength of relationship was the number one factor in determining whether somebody would be a high performer. And so I always say that every interaction has two components. Think about you and I today. The relationship that you and I form and how we conduct ourselves and treat each other. And then we have the topic of discussion, the issue. And those are the only two elements in every component of life. There are people, and then there's something you're overcoming or you're addressing or you're dealing with. And you can't fix the latter if you haven't fixed the former. If you haven't developed a strong relationship, you're compromising your ability to define the problem and solve it collectively or collaboratively. So if you're listening out there and you want to think about things to do with your children, help them to develop their social skills and goodwill. Help them to build connections. And I can tell you what that looks like. There are basically 3 levels of connection. Experiential, where we trade on things that we experience in life. I just went to this great beach. The views were beautiful. It was warm. The water was crystal clear. The sand was beautiful. There's no vulnerability.
Right.
The guy was on a nice beach. Tells it sounds wonderful. Where was it? I'd love to go.
Right.
Right? Experiential. Engagement. What do you do physically and intellectually with repetition that brings you joy? I like to read fiction. I like to read nonfiction. I like to run. I like to ride my bike. I have a boat. I like to build cars. I build models. I like to paint. I like to go bird watching. Things you do with physical or intellectual repetition. And when you and I say, oh, I'm a bird watcher too, or I like to go sailing too, it brings a higher level of connection than, hey, I just saw a nice beach. Because it's now things that we've chosen to do. They bring us joy, and there's an overlap in the list of things that you do and I do.
Right. Right.
Even interest. Maybe I don't watch birds, but I'm fascinated by people that do.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, I'm glad you're interested. Let me tell you about my last trip to Alaska, where I saw these really rare birds that are only in Alaska.
That's really fascinating. Okay.
3rd level of connection is meaningful life. When I last spoke to you, I think you've got a 10-month-old back in, that was in November.
Yeah, now she's 14. I guess she'll be 15 months soon.
15 months, right? So, and then you have, a 6.5-year-old, right?
Yep. Well, she's 7, almost 7.5 now, but it's been months since we talked. So your accuracy is great. Do you have an AI agent that's preparing presidential notes for you? I just built an AI agent that does that. It's like, before I meet people, it's going to summarize for me. Like, here's who you're talking to. Here's the context. Here's I just built yesterday and bought to help with that. Anyways.
Well, I just take notes, and then I looked at the notes just to remember, because I don't remember. And that just in the last 3 months, I think I've met 500 people. So
a couple.
I'm not going to remember. But the number one thing we can do is help our children learn these skills.
Yeah.
And think about it. In a world where automation becomes first and foremost, where there's a greater propensity to move to computers doing the math, computers doing the work, robots doing the work, what's going to be valued is the interactions that you and I have and our ability to agree on how that computer should be used, where it should be directed. That will have greater value. The computers will learn to program themselves, and they'll analyze the data. The question is, once we see what the computer or the robot is doing for us, how do we as humans interface with each other relative to how we're going to use and direct that resource?
I agree.
And so I believe we're doing our children a disservice by telling them it's all about the data and AI. Yes, that's an important component, but it does not diminish the need for people to be able to work with people.
100%. We've been replacing humans since forever. Calculator used to be a job. People used to be calculators. Like I go and I do math for this company, and then we had calculators. Farmers, we have tractors now. Oh, we don't need farmers anymore. We got spreadsheets. We don't need accountants anymore. Hey, we got QuickBooks. We don't need CPAs anymore. We've been doing this over and over and over again. And I just don't think the bus is ever going to decide to drive itself. I don't think it's got that inner spark, that soul that gives it self-direction in that sense. I mean, you can set up a robot and it'll point in a direction. It'll just go. But I'm not a believer that AI is going to become sentient, and it's just a tool. It's a very smart tool. It's an extension of predictive search right now to a certain extent, and we're giving it, hands and feet and ability to do things, but it's going to be about the people. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. So can we recap? Because you said there were 4 types of social. Yeah.
So the third one is meaningful life. So the first one is the experiential. The second one is engagement, physical or intellectual. And then the last one is meaningful life. And so I'm talking about your children. When I mentioned your children, you were like, huh, That's nice. He remembers my children.
Yeah.
I have 3 children. When we talk about the things we love and care most deeply about, it takes us to even a higher level of connection because he remembers something that I care deeply about.
Yeah.
He remembered that. And it's important to me to remember that you have children because when you have children, your focus of your life isn't necessarily you any longer,
Yep.
right? Now, when you get married, there's one level of where it's no longer all about you, but that's accentuated with children,
Yes.
right? And it's different having 1 child, 2 children, 3 children, 5 children, 7 children, 9 children, 12 children. So appreciating that just having children is it's one tribe, but even within that tribe, to your point, it's different when you have 9
Mhm.
versus, we have 3. So having an appreciation for maybe not having lived that, but caring to understand it and understanding it relative to you is that highest level of connection. That's that meaningful life where you care deeply about what I care deeply about. And you're showing through the way you interact with me and ask questions that you have care at that level. And it's real, it's genuine, it's not fake. And so, to the extent your children learn to take interest in others' experiences and what they do with repetition, even though they don't love it or
Yeah.
even care about it or haven't done it, the fact that they care enough to ask about it and learn about it builds.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And then what's the fourth?
That's it. There's just 3. It's just
Sorry.
3.
I wrote down four. I was waiting. My apologies. So we have experiential, engagement, physical and mental, and meaningful life, like caring about someone's life, witnessing it. Witnessing it. Like the kids always, hey dad, watch this. Like people just want you to witness and care about what they're doing and what they're going through. Is that a fair?
Yeah, yeah, but that's the engagement. The meaningful life is more like, do you believe in a higher being?
Mm,
What is that higher? Is it Buddha? Is it
right,
Jesus Christ?
right,
Is it Muhammad?
right.
It's like, what is it that you believe in? Because that governs what you care about. It governs how you
Mm,
define yourself. It governs in where you believe you are relative to others in the universe. And then children are part of that. Spouses are part of that. But I also believe, there are people that are dedicated to saving animals. That's
mm,
meaningful life. That's something I love so deeply that I would sacrifice myself to save a pack of dogs.
yeah, I get that. Having it like
Yeah.
almost like having an ikigai and a shared understanding it, like a life purpose.
Yeah, and it's greater than just the engagement, meaning we can do things with intellectual interest, read a book or me doing the behavioral work. That's partially, I do it because it's intellectually interesting to me.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, but it also serves my faith in that, I'm Catholic and I believe in, you know, the Holy Trinity and
mhm,
and
mhm,
that
mhm.
the behavioral stuff is my way of helping elevate others and doing it in a more directed, more focused, more efficient manner. So it serves my meaningful life and my engagement. There's overlap,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And so
mm.
when people understand that and take interest in it, that even bronze you more because it's not only the meaningful life, but it's engagement that you understand what activities I
Yeah.
undertake to achieve those things that are important in my meaningful life.
Yep. 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 That's powerful. And that's a great, that's a great analogy. That's what builds. Some people want to, you know, the, there's drawbacks to things like crony capitalism and nepotism, but some of it comes from a genuine and sincere, just shared experience, shared desire, shared common goals, shared ethos. And that's where and that's a great example, I think, is Coney 2012. So I did a bunch of volunteer work with this nonprofit, Invisible Children. I actually translate the film into Japanese. I was living in Tokyo at the time. And I worked with UNHCR and actually traveled around Japan for the Refugee Film Festival showing this documentary about child soldiers in northern Uganda. The movement never really took off, but then the founders of the nonprofit, one of them, the one, I think two of them, there were three, I think two of them died in Uganda, were actually attacked by the rebels. But the one of them, he did a film where his son was the focal point and it exploded. It had like 100 million views or something. And I feel my personal opinion was before all the other videos were about like the kids in Africa, which is hard for, if you're not African, it's hard for people to relate with because they can't see themselves necessarily through that experience. But what they did instead is the video was all of what he's learned and gone through the son of his son, who's like 4 or 5 at the time, and him explaining it. So you have this little white boy explaining this, and now all of a sudden people can really connect with and resonate with that because they can see themselves in the child, if that makes sense. in their own home. I
Yeah.
got a kid like that. And I think that speaks to that. Having looked and assessed so many people, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people, what habits do you feel are mission critical for?
I think that the interpersonal stuff, I think that emotional intelligence. So to round out emotional intelligence, we look at social acuity, social skills and goodwill. Do I connect and is there genuine care and compassion behind that connection? And then it's compromise and accommodation on the transactional or process side, meaning am I open-minded and am I willing to move in a new direction? And then the thing that links the two components together is avoidance. Do I avoid? Meaning I could have perfect social skills and goodwill, perfect compromise and accommodation, but if I avoid, I'm not engaging something that I naturally have the ability to do. I just don't do it. Now, you could have really low avoidance, meaning you're highly engaged and really poor social skills and really poor goodwill and really poor compromise and accommodation. And your emotional intelligence is really struggling to understand situations and people and situations, excuse me. So I think that whole EQ is learned. It's not genetic. I think that we can do a better job of helping people develop the strength in relationship. Every time I meet you, Daryl, like we had a lovely conversation back in November, but I'm getting to know you better. You're
Mm,
sharing with me things you did, internationally, work that you did in Japan, your children. You shared with me before we got on a little bit about your parents and that you spent 7 weeks with them and that
mm,
you did a lot of family stuff. I'm learning more about you every time I talk to you and you about me.
mm.
So our relationship is maturing and it's advancing and it's growing, as opposed to if I said, look, we're going to do this podcast. I really don't give a crap about
Yeah.
your family, what you did for the last 7 weeks. What questions you want to ask me?
Yeah.
Like what do we want to get out of this?
Yeah.
No, I do want to know. I want to know who's the human being. And then how do we navigate situations if you and I disagree on something about, I don't know, rearing and when the child should have a cell phone,
Yeah.
right? Okay, well, why do you have your position? And what are the reasons why you hold that position? Is it because you
Mm,
don't like assuming your idea is that kids shouldn't have a cell phone until they get to high school? Well, is it because you don't want them carrying a phone around? You don't want them to be constantly consuming information that you can't curate and you don't
yeah.
know the accuracy of it? And these young children, their little brains don't have the ability to decipher fiction from reality. What is that reason why you don't believe they should have one? Versus if I held the position, no, they should get it when they're at birth. We
Yeah.
should attach it to their head and they should be able to, we should teach them. Not that that's my position by any means, but I hold that position. Well, I think the world is all about technology and the evolution of the world will be dependent on technology. And the sooner they learn how to use it, they'll be better able to navigate a world that's going to be automated and information is king. And, you know,
Mm,
that doesn't mean either of our positions are entirely right, but it
yeah.
allows us to start to have a rational conversation as to
Patient.
about where's the truth reside within your
Yeah.
position and my position.
Yeah. I just watched because Mr. Beast does all these videos and he does all of these basically social experiments. And he's recently done 2 seasons of the Beast games. And somebody had asked, like, what have you learned about human psychology? And they were actually even asking some of the contestants about what does it take to succeed in these games? Because sometimes people are turning down $1 million for people that they just met, type thing. And that was talking what you talked about, like that rings true in these games, that it's about the interpersonal dynamics and all if you try to be everybody's friend, like all that fades away under pressure. And so as the pressure builds, the quality and consistency of your social currency and your emotional intelligence really shines through. And it doesn't guarantee successful outcome, but at least it prevents you from being sort of turned on by your peers and sort of purged from the group. And so they were talking about, and even the season, they were saying that the people that made it to the end were the ones who were the fairest and also like treated everybody the best, but they weren't insincere in any way. They didn't pretend to be people's friends that they didn't have that resonance with, but at the same time, they were still respectful. So it really spoke what you're saying. I mean, just last night, literally before I went to sleep, I was listening to this because I'm intrigued. I mean, this guy does all these social experiments. Essentially, that's what they are, right? What they said. And so it's really resonating with exactly what you say right now. I think that's incredibly powerful. So you already spoke a little bit. Maybe can you tap on a little bit more? Where are things going? Because in some ways, the world's becoming more tribal. Warfare has evolved in a lot of ways. It's not as kinetic. I mean, there are kinetic wars going on, of course, but also there's, economic wars, there's political wars, there's lawfare. And in some ways, it's becoming more and more tribalistic. Some people are becoming more patriotic. I know Japan recently They've been more, like they've been doubling down on what it means to be Japanese. So we're seeing this. Where do you see things going in the next, let's say, 5 years, 10 years per se?
I think that when you turn the news on at night, it's constant doom and gloom. I think that we're fed, the war in with Ukraine and Russia, and the United States attacking Iran, and the unrest in the Middle East, and Israel fighting multiple fronts at this time, and we are going into Venezuela and taking their leader out. There are all these things that start to create worry. I saw today a piece that less and less women are wanting to get married. It's like
Mm,
43% of women have any desire at all to get married
wow.
versus,
Yeah.
it means 57% don't want to get married,
Yeah.
which is it's concerning. And, I heard this little blurb about like a woman's worth isn't defined by her, need to marry and procreate. Well, you know, I could
Yeah.
go down my whole religious bent on,
No, but even without religion, just spend some time alone. Like for all these people that do that, I feel like there's going to be a rude awakening. You didn't ask, sorry. I guess I'm just taking the mic and standing on the soapbox. But even if you get rid of the religious things and that, it's all about the people. You want people to witness what you're doing. I said this before. Hey, Dad, watch me. Hey, watch. You want to go on stage and share, and you want to be recognized for your achievements, and you can't do that in a vacuum. It's about the other people. It's all about people. They talked about my parents being here for 7 weeks, having them to share and build a relationship with my kids and them. That's so deep and meaningful. And it doesn't mean you have to have kids, but what you're talking about, then there's no bonding, there's no depth. It's instead of inch wide, mile deep, it's just all superficial stuff. And
so there's that element I think is problematic that we have young men and women
yeah,
who have this, I think, limited view
yeah,
of what is important in life. And that is shaping how they think and
yeah,
how they process and their emotional reaction versus rational thinking. We do live on the positive side of the ledger. We live in a world now where more information is available more easily and more readily than ever before,
yeah,
but it has to be curated and it has to be at the individual level. People have to use common sense.
yeah,
Does it make sense? Right. And do I understand the spectrum of positions and ideas?
yeah,
And that is easily available, not always readily accessed. Meaning
right,
they have the resources, but they select, well, I don't, I'm not going to watch CNN because it's too liberal, but I'm going to watch Fox. And the inverse is I'm going to only watch
right,
CNN and
right,
I'm never going to watch Fox. And well,
right.
okay. And that's an extreme because it's in the public domain. But my point being, be a consumer of knowledge across the spectrum available.
Yes,
Okay. And that is available to us. So I believe there are people and podcasts are making this a reality.
yes,
People listen to this podcast, and if they do, they'll learn something they didn't know about
yeah,
behavior.
yeah.
They will. The second part is something my oldest son shared, Luke, the other night at dinner. The Catholic religion is growing faster than ever.
Oh, yeah,
It's the fastest growing religion, and it's growing at a faster rate than it ever has in the history of the religion. So that means people are seeking a deeper understanding of
understanding and meaning.
why they exist. And I think that is a positive thing. I think that we need to get back to family values. The most important thing I ever did was marry my wife, Stephanie, and have 3 children. It defines me. And yes, it does define my value. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, it does.
No,
It is
100%.
the, it's the
Substrate that built our civilization. It's the
yeah.
ethos. Sorry to cut you off, but it's the ethos. It's the bedrock of what made the Western great. I mean, we. It's all about human flourishing. My step adopted dad. He's a man of science, physics, and geology. And I said, okay, well, you tell me how to explain the tenets proven over thousands of years of human flourishing to my 7-year-old kid in a way that they're going to understand. Like, okay, let's say it's all nonsense. Like, let's just say, okay, but give me okay, oh wise one, give me simple ways and a compass, a moral compass. I mean, show me someone that's lived the 7 heavenly virtues and has a bad life. And then show me someone that's lived and embraces the 7 deadly sins and has a good life. Like Nicholas Tesla said, if you want to unlock the secret to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so if you need proof that the universe is fractal, just think about how people come out of other people. Like
Yeah.
that's like the people come out of other people. It's all a fractal, and there's vibrations, and people talk about changing your energy and the law of attraction and resonant tuning and all this sort of stuff. So okay, how are you living your life? Are you giving into your most animal basest desires? I thought this was interesting. They talked about different wavelengths, and they said that the devil is red because it's the lowest wavelength. And that's your animalistic desires. You're just an animal. Like you just give in to all your animal all urges. But as you climb that, you have a greater, and even you think about our brain, we got the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and now we have a neocortex. And this is an evolution, an ability to reason, delay gratification, have object permanence outside of us in a way that, others don't. So I think just to speak to what you're saying is that's really important, that we need to find higher purpose and meaning. I think that's a really powerful message.
I love the line of thinking you just went through. And as you were saying it, it brought me back to this sort of basic tenet of Catholicism. We seek truth, not utility and pleasure, right? That we should be striving to teach our children to seek the truth, not strictly seek utility and pleasure. What we find is that today it is easier to go along with the masses when we know they're wrong. It's more comfortable to take the easier path
Yeah.
than the harder path. It's more comfortable to not speak up when you see a wrong being done. And so we move away from truth because it's work. It's work. It's not always easy to face the truth,
Yep.
right? And so I think that truth is more easily attained through social acuity, building relationships, connection, because now you're willing to be vulnerable with me. I'm willing to be vulnerable with you. And I think finding the situational truth, compromise and accommodation, understanding, being open to all the information, being willing to move when you learn something new in a new direction because it makes sense to do so because the data substantiates it, and be willing to say that the information that I had before was incomplete or misleading. And as a result, we're seeing that right now. We're seeing it with many factors in healthcare, right? This whole debate about, vaccines. Are all vaccines bad? No. Are all vaccines good? No.
Yeah.
So it's up to the individual to understand that there's far more data out there on vaccines than was ever shared or put into the public domain. And it will shape your understanding of which ones are good and bad if you avail yourself to it. But saying that I'm, part of a cult if I believe in something that's new
Yeah.
is disingenuous at best.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a good way to summarize it is compassion and evidence. If you can show compassion for yourself or others and just do your best to observe the evidence, collect the evidence, verify the evidence, and then the path forward becomes really clear. Problem is we have all sorts of people that have different morality, and this comes back to needing to understand yourself and others and why this stuff is important, because not everybody has the same moral compass. Not everybody has the same idea of value. Some people are very attached to the material things and world at any cost. And so you have to be able to navigate that. I mean, just look at the food pyramid. They literally just flipped it upside down, which means that for something like 60 plus years, the government, it was institutionalized, marching everyone towards a path. If you were on a school food program, military rations, like hospitals, they were marching you towards sickness, illness, and death, like obesity, diabetes, and like this is just nonsense. So, Curtis, I could be here talking to you all day. We've got so much to go through. This has been such a great call. I've got a couple pages of notes, but I do want to be respectful of your time. I know you got direct reports and kids and businesses and your own following. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
No, I think it was, I really enjoyed the discussion, and you made it such a nice discussion by the way you framed the questions. And then I really loved your responses and your insight and perspective. So thank you for sharing that with me. Sometimes it's just me talking, and it's really nice to get, the host's perspectives and insights. And so thank you for that. And, would love to do it again sometime if if you want to do it again, let's look at doing it again in the future.
I'd love to have you back. And for people listening that want to learn more, they want to take your assess, they want to be assessed by your 4 instruments, they want to learn more, what are some of the best places for them to reach out?
So eurekaconnect.com, and there's a contact me. And then my assistant is Shauna at Eureka Connect, SHANA at eurekaconnect.com. And she can set up a meeting if you want to meet with us, if you want to go through the assessment. You can buy an assessment and you can get a one-on-one feedback with a behavioral specialist. It's, $1,300 for the whole thing, but it's life-changing. It's not cheap, but it's really transformative and it's insightful. And then the Institute for Biomedical Entrepreneurship, we didn't talk a lot about that, but it's a 5-day course on translation. We will hold it in the fall, probably in Cambridge, and then we'll hold one in Europe in the Netherlands. And that's again, a graduate level course. It's delivered in a week. You meet world-class leaders who are part of the program for the entirety of the week. They're mentors, advisors that work with you on your projects and help you to develop your thinking, your ideas, and help you to find the kind of resources you need to develop your idea, funding, team members, whatever. And that's ibeinc.org is the website. Again, ibeinc.org. And Shauna Kwok, Kwaak, she can also help you if you need help connecting with us or finding out more about that program.
So the two websites are ibeinc.org, Indian butterscotch everybody inc.com, and then Eureka Connect, Eureka. That's Eureka, Eureka Connect.com. And Shauna, how do you spell her name again?
S-H-A.
Okay, S-H-A-N-A. So you can go Shauna, S-H-A-N-A at eurekaconnect.com. Send an email, ask your questions. If you need any help, reach out. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with all of us, knowing that you got your own engagements, your own direct reports, your own community. Thank you for coming and sharing with my audience tonight so we can all learn more and do better.
Thank you, Daryl. Appreciate it.